Welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life. We are live now, and we look forward to a great event this evening. We have a couple of things going on tonight. The first thing we have is a presentation by Bill Faloon. It's part 2. And if you haven't seen that presentation, his first presentation, you can watch that on our YouTube channel. Tonight, however, we are streaming, and we'll have Joe Kowalsky to join us here in a moment. All through the evening, you can make a comment or ask a question in the comments section. So you can join us there. If you have a question, be sure to get your question in there, and we'll try to get an answer for you this evening. Let's bring Joe in to join us here. I'd also like to point out that Tuesday, January 12th, is James Bedford Day. It's a celebration where we will have Ben Best giving one of his wonderful performances and presentations. And we're looking forward to that. So a special event next month, Tuesday, January 12th, James Bedford Day. Join us to celebrate that. And we now would like to welcome Joe to our forum. Hello, Joe.
Good evening. Thank you, Neil. Thanks, Church Perpetual Life.
So glad you are here. As I mentioned, we're going to have our event. Our event will start with a presentation by Bill Faloon, which is part 2. And again, if you haven't seen part 1, you can watch that on our YouTube channel. After that, we're going to go live with Joe Kowalsky. And after Joe has his presentation, we'll have a chance for questions for Joe. So we're going to bring you back shortly. At this point, yeah, I do too, Joe. At this point, let's go to our presentation from Perpetual Life.
Welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life. I am Neil Vandry, your officiator here at the church. I'd like to welcome you to our live stream presentation for part 2 of Bill Faloon's presentation. We are continuing from last month, and afterwards we'll be celebrating the remembrance of the Resurrectables tonight, remembering and honoring the patients currently in cryonic suspension, awaiting reanimation. If this is your first time joining us, I'd like to invite you to join our email list so that we can keep you updated on our services, on all that is going on with Radical Life Extension, so that you may live longer and healthier lives. You can join our email simply by emailing me at neil, N-E-A-L, at churchofperpetuallife.org, or send me an email through the website. I understand that there are people creating watch parties all around the country and the world, and we welcome you to do the same in your local community. I miss you. I know that many of you miss us here. I hope that we can get back someday to our services in person, but in the meantime, we have these presentations that are going live stream, and please let me know if any of our members, if you or any of our members are suffering from COVID-19 or any other health challenges. Please let me also know about any joyful news that I can share with other members of our church. Join me now in reciting our creed. We believe that all life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our gospel, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, in our unified efforts, become an instrument in universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said, the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. As you know, RAADfest was held through live stream this past October, and you can watch these amazing presentations from RAADfest if you just go to the raadfest.com website, and be sure to share this event and the RAADfest event with your friends and family. Our mission here at Perpetual Life is to assist all people in the radical extension of healthy human life. Here we provide fellowship for longevity enthusiasts. At our regular services, we often have guest speakers that teach scientific rationality along with the Creator's plan that humanity evolved to achieve markedly extended, healthy lifespans. We follow the prophet's Arthur C. Clarke, who said, "Every revolutionary idea seems to evoke 3 stages of reaction. They may be summed up by the phrases, first, it's completely impossible. Second, it's possible, but it's not worth doing. And third, I said it was a good idea all along." We agree and we know that extreme life extension is possible, it's worth doing, and it's a great idea all along. We also follow our prophet Nikolai Fedorov's philosophy of the common task for humanity. Fedorov believed, as we do here, that we should divert human energies away from wars and dissensions toward measures for protecting mankind against natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes, droughts and hurricanes, and especially aging, and to transform nature from a temporary enemy into an eternal friend, to reverse the aging process and to defeat aging. This Church of Perpetual Life is a faith and science-based transhumanist church. Our faith is in the Creator and in humanity to find ways toward healthy, unlimited lifespans. Because of the COVID outbreak, we have not had any in-person meetings since earlier this year, and we are happy now to begin conducting online live streams, and these are live stream only events, until the threat of the COVID outbreak is over. This month, we are honored to share the second part of a presentation by Bill Faloon, which was originally created for the RAADfest and has been edited for us to use tonight. Please make note of any questions or comments that you have through this live stream and email them to me. Again, you can email me at neil@churchofperpetuallife.org or through our website. And also during the live stream, you can chat with me and other members that are watching the live stream through our chat panel. So we now turn to Mr. Bill Faloon to continue his update on age reversal. And after the presentation by Bill Faloon, we will have the live stream of our Remembrance of the Resurrectables, which will be short biographies of people who have been placed into cryonic suspension and are awaiting resuscitation. So now we turn to Bill Faloon.
For those people who don't like to exercise, I've got some encouraging news for you. They did a study with rats that were old and sedentary, weren't able to do any kind of exercise, and of course they experienced accelerated brain aging. That happens when you don't exercise. Your risk of dementia increases and your cognitive facilities, they decline. So they took just middle-aged and old mice, put them into a cage with a treadmill, let them run on that treadmill for hours every day, and then they took the plasma out of those middle-aged and old mice and put it into the sedentary old mice, and they were able to see rejuvenation of the brains of mice who were not exercising. They were able to see new neurons being developed in the hippocampus, which is fantastic. But what's really fantastic is, while we know exercise can help do that, these were sedentary mice, and all they got was the plasma from the active mice. And these were not young mice, these were mice middle-aged and older who were simply exercising. So for those of you who are using young plasma donors to try to reverse your aging process, it might be a good idea to find one who's very active, who exercises an hour or two every day, because you may get a much more powerful effect as it relates to your ability to grow new neurons and regenerate your brain if you get a healthy person who's physically active. So to surmise this study, the aged mice that received plasma from middle-aged or old mice that exercised, they got the beneficial effects in their brain without having to hit the treadmill. And even more exciting is an enzyme generated in the livers of the exercising mice was largely responsible for that brain restoring effect. So again, for those people who hate to exercise and may not be able to afford a young plasma donor, there could be a pill someday. It's just the enzyme that's released during exercise that regenerates your aged brain. Just absolutely fascinating research. Now, the ultimate objective of everything we're doing is to rebuild youthful bone marrow structure, specifically in the hematopoietic stem cell niche. A company called Magenta is doing some spectacular research, and it's aimed at finding better treatments for myeloproliferative disorders such as leukemia, multiple myeloma, myelodysplastic syndrome, and they've developed a way to remove the disease-causing cells, and we hope that includes senescent cells, and then replace it with young, healthy bone marrow. And that's going to wind up being an effective treatment, if it works, against leukemia, multiple myeloma, myelodysplastic syndrome. This is potentially transformative what they're doing because they're hoping to find ways to better treat these common hematological malignancies. Remove the disease-causing cells and then use a gene therapy to enable healthy young bone marrow to be restored. Now, this chart gives you an example of how they plan to do that with people who are unfortunately stuck with these hematological problems. And that is, they're going to remove the patient's cells and they're going to alter those cells in a way through gene therapy so that they're young and healthy again, but don't lose their genetic profile, and then put them back into a person with leukemia who perhaps has had their bone marrow damaged quite a bit for all kinds of reasons, both therapy and the disease itself. Put that back into the leukemia patient and improve the odds of them surviving. Now, if this therapy gets FDA approval to treat hematological malignancies, it might be something we can use to restore our bone marrow. And by doing that, we can then produce youthful immune function, youthful tissue repair, because it largely starts in the hematopoietic stem cell niche. It ages on us. Our bone marrow gets old and we're unable to function like we did when we were younger. We just don't have the same regenerative capacity because of a hematopoietic stem cell aging factor that may be reversible. We may be able to rebuild bone marrow through a technology aimed at curing common forms of cancer. Now, the November issue of Life Extension magazine will have an exclusive interview with a scientist that is working on something called Cardiosphere derived cells. These are progenitor cells found in the heart. And what happened 3 years ago is I started talking about these cells because they're able to rejuvenate all parts of the heart and other parts of the body. They have systemic regenerative effects, and this looked like a potential to cure people who suffered from chronic heart failure. So we got real excited, but the company was not particularly responsive to my emails and phone calls, so I thought, well, maybe this research just didn't pan out, maybe they ran out of money. But I was pleasantly surprised that the research has continued, and what they're finding is that in response to these cardiosphere-derived cells, which are very easy to obtain from an old heart, an old human heart still has cardiosphere-derived cells, and they can remove them from an old heart, propagate them in a laboratory, and then systemically put them back in and induce gene expression improvements, elongate telomeres, restore cardiac function back to a more functional state. This is remarkable what they're working on. So we can't wait till this technology becomes available to muscular dystrophy patients, because we'll probably seek to study it in older people to see if we can reverse aging in people the way it did in the animal model. So we have all this science emerging that is inducing meaningful reversal of pathological aging processes in the fortunate rodents. Well, we need to gain access to that real fast, because about 5,000 people a day are dying of degenerative aging. We need to bridge the longevity gap. We need to break through the delays, these barriers that are precluding consumers from accessing scientific advances that could very well save the lives of millions and millions of people. So here's one way we're going to do it. There is a charity called Better Humans. They've been around for 4 or 5 years. They've done incredible research, by the way, on NAD, senolytics, rapamycin. They've done so many proof of concepts clinical studies that lets us know what's really happening in the field. But they have opened up the first anti-aging clinical trials facility that will seek to induce meaningful reversal of biological aging. They are located about an hour north of Orlando, Central Florida, and they are a charity. This is not a commercial company, but what's amazing is what they're going to do. This might look like a regular doctor's office to you. It's got some nice diagnostic equipment, but what they're doing is beyond comprehension. Of course, they're going to measure body composition when they introduce age reversal interventions. But what they have in this facility is a blood sample preparation room where they can draw blood from study subjects and then send it to their laboratory just a few miles away and get real-time sequencing as to how well an experimental age reversal therapy is really working, including the DNA methylation epigenetic aging clock. Wow, they can do that in a couple days as opposed to it taking a long time and costing a lot of money. They can do whole transcriptome gene expression testing. They have so many different ways of assessing aging. Now, this equipment would have cost tens or $20 million, huge amounts of money. This is a charity. I am a major contributor to it, as are about just 3 other people. We put in a couple $1 million to make this happen so we can do massive amounts of age reversal research on a consistent basis and get real-time results. Again, the Horvath clock for DNA methylation, that typically costs a lot of money. Well, that's going to be done on the premises. So if you're undergoing, let's say, a study where you're getting NAD and some senolytic treatments and rapamycin, they're going to be able to see real quick, is it working? If it's not working, we'll rearrange the dosing, add something, subtract something. They're going to be able to accelerate aging research beyond anything we've ever imagined, including evaluating whether or not the senolytic you're taking is really working by measuring the senescence-associated secretory phenotype. And of course, be able to get NAD measurements in real time to know if people are getting enough NAD restoration to repair their DNA. This is, again, unprecedented. And to even go a step further to let you know what they're doing, they're going to make their own stem cells and exosomes, mitochondria. They've got the CMP processing hood, that's hoods, and then they've got the sterile clean room where they can make biologicals, maintain cell lines, create induced pluripotent stem cells, reprogram cells, isolate mitochondrial for mitochondrial transfer research, isolate exosomes. They'll be able to make that on their premises, not have to pay these outlandish commercial prices, and then test different combinations of all these therapies in humans. And just so you know, Better Humans has conducted 6 clinical trials in which they've enabled us to understand that NAD restoration and senolytic therapy and a number of other interventions, they do have real-world benefits. They're now going to be able to combine all of these different interventions and then measure in real time whether or not people are growing biologically younger. So this organization, which again is a charity, they do not charge people to participate in their studies. So if you happen to live around your Orlando area and you want to participate in some of these studies, well, just log on to the Better Humans website, just send them an email, and you'll get put on the list, and then they'll reach out to you when they're ready to do a clinical study. It's very, very impressive. Now, senolytics. We've got a big update coming up for you here about senolytics. Now, most of you understand that senescent cells accumulate with age. They impede organ function, they create systemic inflammation, and then they emit these protein-degrading enzymes that destroy surrounding cells. We've seen the results from clinical trials and in the animal model. And that's what's most impressive. These animal model studies use very high doses and are able to show systemic age reversal in response to dasatinib and quercetin. Just those 2 senolytics together have induced major regenerative effects by getting rid of the senescent cell burden that older people suffer. Now, Dr. Alan Green practices up in Little Neck, New York, and he's a real hero in a lot of ways because he takes the information that many of you understand and he puts it into clinical practice. For many years, he's been prescribing rapamycin and metformin and other AMPK activators to his patients. He's got 500 who have undergone rapamycin treatment. He reports very good results on his website. And what he did recently is he started adding a senolytic protocol to the people already taking rapamycin. And this is a very, very aggressive senolytic protocol, and that involves the dasatinib, 100 milligrams a day for 3 days, quercetin for 3 days, and then fisetin, 1,500 milligrams for 3 days. And he's doing that 4 times a year for healthy people, and for people with degenerative illnesses, he's doing it 1 or 2 times a month. He's reporting to us good results. You can read everything about what he's doing on the website on this slide. Now, I'm not advocating that anybody follow that particular protocol right now on your own, because it is very aggressive, much more aggressive than anything we've ever recommended before. But the good news with the Better Humans research facility is we can test Dr. Green's protocol and see just how well it is reducing the senescent cell burden, and then be able to advise our support groups, our various age reversal networks, the RAADfest attendees, what's really working, what is that ideal dose to induce age reversal without overdoing it. So the good news is that we can remove senescent cells from aging bodies. The bad news is, based on a publication of December 2019, is the senescent cell problem is worse than what we thought. We know these production of senescent cells increases with age. We know they catalyze their own production. And trying to remove them becomes more difficult with aging, mainly because our immune function, it declines. And immune function is a powerful way that we normally reduce our senescent cell burden. So senescent cells, they accumulate to the point where they reduce our ability to remove them in the body. It's literally a snowball effect. And some research that they published again in December 2019, it showed that in a young mouse, they're able to remove senescent cells in about 5 days. They have a very fast turnover, but the older mouse takes 25 days. And a problem with that is the burden of increasing senescent cells overcomes the ability to remove them, and you eventually die from an excess amount of senescent cells. In this study, when 30% of the cells became senescent, that was pretty much the tipping point that led people to death. So we can't wait to see how various senolytic compounds reduces senescent cell burden. Now, a new study that our Life Extension group funded sought to identify a way to make fisetin, which may be the most effective senolytic agent out there. A lot of people have speculated about that, but we've been able to make it available in a form that absorbs from the small intestines into the bloodstream. And we've been getting calls from people, frankly, for the last 3-4 years saying, why aren't you selling high-dose fisetin? And our response is, well, we're not sure you absorb any of it. And if you do absorb some of it, it's very inconsistent. This biofisetin was shown to have 25 times greater absorption. And the great news is it costs about $11 a month. It's very inexpensive. So we're going to advocate for some people to supplement with fisetin every day. Instead of doing an aggressive senolytic protocol 4 times a year, let's see what happens when you use a senolytic every single day to emulate what occurs in nature. A young person's immune system is constantly removing senescent cells, and when we grow older, we lose that ability. So what the researchers have done up to now is put people on high doses of dasatinib and quercetin and fisetin and hope they're going to get rid of enough senescent cells to make a difference. Maybe more effective just to take 1 fisetin capsule a day, very inexpensive, and see if that doesn't work better. And the good news is, with the Better Humans research, we're going to be able to ascertain, do people really need dasatinib and quercetin, or can maybe they get away with just using fisetin in a bioavailable form to reduce their senescent cell burden. And the benefits with NAD of any form was improved energy levels and improved sense of well-being, and those are okay. This is adding on the NAD to everything else that they were doing, so those are pretty good numbers, but nothing compared to fasting. The benefits of fasting, a 54% improvement in your sense of well-being, 47% increase in your energy levels, wow, 44% reduction in body fat. These are far greater benefits than what you're going to see with virtually anything else. But then again, when it came to hormone replacement therapy, as it relates to feeling better, wow, you're going to, 74% people had an improved sense of well-being, greater energy levels, improved cognitive function, reduction of excess body fat. It turns out that the winner of our survey was technology that we evolved back in the 1980s, and that is replace your hormones that are lost to aging. And when you do that, you get a better anti-aging effect that you can feel than with any other therapy. So we tend to forget what was working in the past because new technologies evolve and people get all excited about NAD and senolytics and rapamycin and everything else that's come about over the last 5 years, including young plasma, but we forget about our hormones. So please, when you get your blood tested and you're hormone deficient, well, restore those hormones back to a youthful range and you're going to probably feel a heck of a lot better. So the dilemma that we're faced with today is a lot of people are out there on their own, experimenting without really informing a group of people what they're doing. So we're losing a lot of data in that regard. But we know that there's no single therapy that's going to address all of the pathological processes involved with degenerative aging. Not a single therapy is going to work. So the solution is to intervene with a cocktail, a combination of treatments that has been shown in various models to improve healthy longevity and measure the biological age, also the clinical measures of aging. If you're able to get people off their blood pressure medication, get them off their statin drugs in response to what you're doing, you've accomplished something really meaningful. But we also want to look at that DNA methylation pattern clock and see if we can't reverse epigenetic age, and that's what we plan to do. So this is our current strategy to reverse aging in people today. It involves many, many different interventions, and the bottom line is they've all been shown to work individually in various models of research. We want to put them all together. Our biggest enemy, procrastination. It has killed a number of RAADfest alumni where they knew they should have engaged in an age reversal intervention, where they knew they had some blood markers that were out of balance, and they just decided they didn't need to do anything about it. And that's a real shame, because even the wealthiest people in the world are not getting the best medical attention that they should. I show these every year, the dead billionaires who could have bought themselves a lot of extra life if they had maybe joined a group of people who were determined to never die. Maybe they would have lived a heck of a lot longer with the kind of money they had. And they were very generous. All these people wrote big checks to charities, but they didn't focus on aging. And aging is what kills people. This individual had a net worth of over $4 billion. He died of COVID, but he probably really didn't. I think he died of aging. He was age 78. He got the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it killed him. At the age of 48, it may have just been a week or two sick, or maybe he never would have felt it. So aging is the #1 problem that we need to reverse. So the harsh reality. There are people who have attended RAADfest starting in 2016, and some of those people are no longer alive. Now, procrastinating, initiating an age reversal intervention, that's one of them. But the most common cause of needless death is failure to build a healthy foundation. Level 1 on this graphic are what we know, represents what we know that people can control today to reduce their risk of degenerative illness. And we've got people thinking, well, I'm going to advance into age reversal. I don't need to worry about level 1 anymore. That is incorrect. That information on level 1, that information in some cases is over 100 years old. It represents ways that you can control to reduce your risk of dying. So we encourage everyone to get their house in order as it relates to their optimal state of health. Correct your underlying disease risk factors now. Make sure after you get your age management panel, if there's something out of balance, take a step to correct it, and then retest that particular item to make sure you succeeded in getting that risk factor in optimal ranges. Because if you don't do that, frankly, you're going to undermine the ability of us to induce age reversal in your body. We can't do it if you fundamentally have a foundation that is unhealthy. We just can't do it. We know what people can do now to reduce their degenerative disease risk, and that's common knowledge. This is both conventional and alternative medicine, but we can't pretend like we can ignore that. Because again, heart attacks and strokes continue to ravage elderly people. You don't hear about it so much because an elderly person is just supposed to die. Well, we don't agree with that philosophy. And if you don't want to die of a cardiovascular condition, you've got to address about 20 different independent risk factors. That's what those daggers pointing at an atherosclerotic plaque represent. Risk factors that you've got to control. Independent means just one of them can kill you. That's why we do the extensive age management profile testing. So correct your underlying disease factors. That's level 1 before progressing to the age reversal interventions. No more needless death. So the risk of delay, well, a couple of them. One is you grow too old to benefit from an age reversal intervention. The other is you wind up dying before you even initiate something. So we don't want any more needless deaths, no more. And that is why I'm preaching the ability of us to ascertain what might kill you is there, but we need to see your blood results. And you need to take your blood pressure on a regular basis to make sure that it is in optimal ranges. We don't have time for delayed age reversal. Now, if every RAADfest attendee was alive today from 2016 to today, maybe I wouldn't be in so much of a hurry. But I've had to deal with a harsh reality, and I've investigated virtually every single case I've heard of, and I've dug into every single medical record I can access, and in virtually every situation, the underlying cause of death was needless. It didn't have to happen. So, the ability to deny death or one's own mortality, well, that's been changed a little bit with COVID. It's made everyone aware that we could pick up a virus that might kill us. And I'm hoping that's going to instill some rationality in people as it relates to aging, because it's the same problem. The same problem with the coronavirus that's killing people typically over age 65, or people with comorbidities like hypertension and obesity and diabetes. Well, those same problems are occurring in elderly people, and it's killing a lot more elderly people, and it's time for people to pull their head out of the sand and start aggressively intervening into their aging process. So our program involves a combination of interventions that have demonstrated efficacy in many, many laboratory models. They've demonstrated efficacy in proof of concept human studies already, and we're going to put them together in every combination imaginable. It's literally like putting the pieces of a puzzle together to identify what is the most effective way of inducing meaningful age reversal. I'm going to conclude this talk by describing briefly an article that appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine just 3 weeks after last year's RAADfest. The title was Getting Comfortable with Risk, and it described the daring innovators, the disruptive thinkers, and the volunteer patients. And without all those three put together, very little medical progress would be made. And this describes RAADfest people. We are the innovators, the disruptive thinkers, and we are all volunteer patients, one way or another, to determine what are we able to do to defeat aging, to reverse biological aging, to deal with the pathologies that people suffer as they grow older. We want to control all that, and we've got the means to do it for the first time in history. Laboratories set up, ready to go, ready to evaluate age reversal technologies in large groups of people. I want to thank everyone for their support, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. So that was a part 2 of Bill Faloon's wonderful presentation. We're so glad to have had this. Again, if you missed part 1, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch that. And I am Neil Vandry, your officiator here tonight. And at this point, I'd like to first say that you can comment on the comment section if you're viewing us live now, ask questions. If, however, you are watching the recording of this event, you can send me any comments or questions. Send those to my email address, neil@churchofperpetuallife.org. I'll be very happy to hear from you. Tonight, now, our second part of the event, of a 3-part event actually, is our next speaker. And this gentleman was born and raised in the Detroit area. Both of his parents are teachers, a fact that he feels encouraged his own lifelong love of learning. He recalls that he first became aware of cryonics when a 7th grade science teacher brought some cryonics material to class. And then Joe was hooked. For the next 15 years, he kept abreast of the movement, eventually becoming an associate member of the Immortalist Society. He still remembers attending meetings at Dave and Connie Ettinger's house and speaking to Bob Ettinger, a man he looked up to as a hero. He's gone on from there to be involved in many activities and is very involved with the Cryonics Institute. Let's bring Joe Kowalsky. Hello, Joe.
Good evening. Good evening, Neil. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Church of Perpetual Life. Thank you, Doug Baldwin, who's behind the scenes making this all happen. And thanks to Bill Faloon for this really exciting event. You know, it's in depth, it's inspiring. He's just such a font of knowledge. And every time I watch him, I get more and more excited about this. In my prior professional life, I was in computer science, and I always start my talks mentioning the cloud. You know, the cloud is not, when you're talking about computers, it's not a cloud, it's somebody else's computer. When you're storing something on the cloud, you're storing it in someone else's computer. What could possibly go wrong with that? Has nothing to do with my talk, but I always like to start with that. My name is Joseph Kowalsky, as Neil mentioned, and as you could probably see on the screen. I've been on the board of the Cryonics Institute for over 25 years, and I've been involved with cryonics for 40 years. Cryonics, we like to think about as an ambulance to the future. For those that are not going to be able to survive until the technologies that Bill was talking about come to fruition, we have cryonics, suspended animation. It's what it's been called in the science fiction. The Cryonics Institute is a non-profit corporation, and the board and most of us are volunteers. Most recently, I founded the Organ Cryopreservation Prize, which is a project of the Immortalist Society. We're doing this through the Immortalist Society, which is a 501c3 charitable organization. And you can see our website, www.cryoprize.info, and our Facebook page, facebook.com/cryoprize. I'm confident that cryonics is going to work. We're really not doing anything new. You know, or as it says in the Bible, there is nothing new. It's just a matter of copying nature. This little guy, this wood frog, he freezes solid when winter comes along. His brain, his lungs, his heart, they all stop. And then the amazing thing, I mean, because pretty much everybody can do that, that's easy. The amazing thing is that in the spring, they all start again. And not only do they all start, but they start in the proper sequence to let this frog live again. Nematodes, little worms, they can actually be taught things. They have memory, and we can test their memories. Nematodes have been frozen and revived, and their memories survived. It's been proven. It can happen. It's going on in nature right now. Tardigrades, otherwise known as water bears, little hardy creatures. They dry out, and then you put a little water in, and it's like they just come right back. But the interesting thing for us is that Japanese scientists froze tardigrades for 30 years and brought them back. And they were okay. Some even had kids. Cute little guys. What about people? I remember when the idea of freezing an embryo, if you'll excuse the pun, was beyond conception. I remember that. I remember how crazy people thought it was, and wrong and bad. And now it's commonplace. And here we have somebody who is 2 years younger than her mother. So it's not just animals, it's not just wood frogs, it's not just tardigrades, human beings. This guy was drinking a little too much, and he fell asleep in the snow in Pennsylvania, and he was found the next day. Paramedics were called out. They determined that he died about 12 hours earlier by our common definition of death. His heart stopped, his lungs stopped. They figured about 12 hours. They called the doctor at the hospital on their phone, and they said, "He's dead, Jim." And the doctor said, "Warm him up." You know, as my friend Dennis Kowalski, who's the president of CI and is also a paramedic, as he said many times, paramedics say, "You're not dead until you're warm and dead." So they warmed him up, and lo and behold, he came back to life. He lost some toes and some fingers from frostbite, but other than that, no damage. So it's a matter of copying nature. And we've been pretty good at copying nature, even though some of our most prominent scientists didn't think we'd be able to. Historically, some religious leaders were against cryonics, and I emphasize some. We had classes that would come from the local Catholic high school to the Cryonics Institute for lectures about cryonics for several years. I myself come from a religious background, and it seems to me that biblically, cryonics is not only allowed, but incumbent upon us. You know, if God doesn't want this to work, it won't work. But if God does want this to work, or higher being, or whatever you'd like to call it, or if you believe in such things, if God does want this to work, what does it say about us if we don't pursue it? We have a God-given ability to do this, and a responsibility not to squander those gifts. Impossible, just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Things have changed since I became involved with cryonics 40 years ago, and certainly since our founder, Robert Ettinger, first proposed the idea of cryonics. You know, back then people thought I was crazy. Today, people think it'll work. It's not for them, but it'll work. But it's not for them. Professor Ettinger was right when he said, "The wind is in our sails." And he said that several years ago, and he was right. But how long will it take for cryonics to succeed? And is there a better way to help it happen sooner and to do something good for society and the world along the way? Scientists have often been negative towards cryonics, so thankfully that's changing a little bit. Government hasn't wanted to fund cryonics because the public doesn't encourage them to, because the scientists say it's not going to work. Eventually, I have no doubt that cryonics will be successful, well received by the general public, just as every medical technique has been. But so far, we've been trying to squeeze a square peg into a round hole. The public may not think this is crazy anymore. But let's face it, most people are just not interested in cryonics. It occurred to me that people are fine using cryo techniques for surgery, but that's a really short-term process and likely will not lead to the breakthroughs necessary for cryonics. So, a few years ago, I thought to myself, what if we try to do something that the vast majority of people today think is important? Something that we really need, and something that not only will benefit cryonics research, but which is imperative to cryonics. A necessary precursor, a stepping stone to the success of cryonics. And it's right there in front of our faces.
Hi, I just donated $10 toward the Cryo Prize to help make organ transplants safer, less costly, and more available to those in need. My name is Sharita. Join me. Click on the link below to read more about the prize and to donate $10. And be sure to share this video with your friends and family.
Thank you, Sharita. Organ transplants have been done successfully for only a handful of decades, yet we practically take them for granted. But they are difficult, expensive, and time-sensitive. And though they've only been done successfully for a relatively short period of time, in many ways, The process is the same as it was when most people had rotary dial telephones. If a kidney is not transplanted within 36 hours, it dies. If a liver is not transplanted within 12 to 16 hours, it dies. Typically, lungs need to be transplanted in under 8 hours, and a heart within 6. That's a very short window of time. If a heart becomes available in Los Angeles at midnight, and the recipient is asleep in Nevada, imagine those 6 hours. The difficulty of quickly assembling the necessary team of experts, transportation costs, preparing the patient. The people involved in this process are amazing, and they do miraculous work. But if that window could be expanded, there would be more time to prepare the team and the patient. Transportation costs would be reduced dramatically. Safety could be enhanced, and more lives would be saved. One way to extend this time is to develop a reliable way to temporarily freeze an organ, as we now do with sperm, eggs, and embryos, and when ready, to revive the organ and implant it into the patient. The Organ Cryopreservation Prize, the Cryoprize, was established to help make this happen. Initially planned to be $50,000, the prize will be given to the first person or group that successfully freezes and restores one of several mammalian organs to full function. Details are on the website below. The prize is administered by a federally recognized 501c3 nonprofit organization. Donations are tax deductible to the extent allowed by law. You can mail in a check, you can donate online. The bigger the prize, the more likely that this procedure will soon become a reality. With your help, the prize could grow far beyond our initial goal of $50,000. So share this with a friend
and
join us.
Join us.
Donate $10. For the cost of 2 large specialty cups of coffee,
You can be a part of this
adventure
and possibly change the world.
Everyone that I've spoken to knows someone who has had or needs an organ transplant, or knows someone who has. Do you? I bet you do. I have a friend that I've talked with about cryonics for 30 years, and but when I mentioned this project about organ transplants, her eyes lit up. She said, you know, you talked to me about cryonics for 30 years, but it really is not meaningful to me. But this organ thing, that's amazing. That's what the public feel. And it's important. You know, the pictures don't tell the full story. This clip that I've taken out of the video, you take a look at the lungs, we have less than 8 hours, but there's more to it than that. Lungs have to be perfect, really perfect, in order to be transplanted. If you transplant a kidney and it doesn't work, you might be able to put in another kidney and possibly even a third. But with lungs, if the first one doesn't work, that's it. The person dies in almost every case. So they have to be very careful with them. And because of that, they have to test them. And they only have less than 8 hours to take it out of the person, test the lungs, get it into the new person, and transport it. Well, it has to be done. Before you get it in, you have to transport it. We lose about 80% of donated lungs because of this. 80%. If we had a better way, if we had more time, if we could take the time necessary to test these lungs and maybe find out that some of these lungs that we're getting rid of actually are viable, we might have enough organs that with today's donors, no one need be on the donor waiting list. Imagine. So, with the help of some friends, that's Leonard Nimoy and the second from right, we have the Cryoprize project, something that almost everyone thinks is important, something that is a necessary stepping stone to cryonics. Spread this around. Support the Cryoprize. You know, in the Star Trek episode Mirror Mirror, Captain Kirk encourages the Spock of the barbaric alternate universe to try to change things. The alternate Spock says that one man cannot summon the future, to which Kirk replies, yes, but one man can change the present. And I think Professor Ettinger would agree with that. So I ask each of you to be that one person. You know, a professor in college, when I was in college, he was too, but he was on the other side of the desk. A professor in college said that studies have shown that people watch the news because it makes them feel like they're doing something about the problems. There's a Jewish proverb in Ethics from the Fathers that says, it is not incumbent upon you to complete the task, but neither are you free to ignore it. And the reality is that in order to do something about it, it's not just watching the news. To do something, you have to do something. You don't have to do everything, but you've got to start. You've got to do something. The Cryo Prize needs your help. I need your help. We all need your help. I want this to be not a $50,000 prize, but $1 million prize. We need donations from people and pledges from corporations. Can you imagine? They can support organ transplant research and not pay a dime unless it's successful. How many times can you do something like that? And they'll get credit for this pledge. We will post it all over the place. We need fundraisers who are better than I am. I need people to run our Facebook page and to create other social media. I need people to let the research community know that this exists. And I've been doing this for 40 years. I'd like to retire someday. It would be nice to have somebody else who could join in this project, maybe help me take it to fruition. But if not, at least one day I can retire and know that it's in good hands and it is going to be successful. Help make organ transplants safer, less costly, and more available. www.cryoprize.info and facebook.com/cryoprize. It's a valiant and necessary project in its own right. And by virtue of this, you will help make cryonics a reality. Again, www.cryoprize.info, www.facebook.com/cryoprize. I feel like one of these guys on TV. This is from an earlier talk. It's not related to the current talk, but I just wanted to see if you're still awake. This is our website and Facebook page, in case you didn't see it. www.cryoprize.info, facebook.com/cryoprize. The last time I gave this talk, I didn't read it aloud. And a friend of mine said, you know, you had it on the screen, but what about people that are blind? You've got to read it aloud. So I'm reading it aloud.
Okay.
www.cryoprize.info, facebook.com/cryoprize. Tell your friends. Call me day or night. Let's push to the limit to make organ vitrification a reality. If we do that, cryonics will succeed, and likely much sooner than it would otherwise. I saw a quote not long ago from the Dalai Lama. He said, there are only 2 days in the year that nothing can be done. One is called yesterday, and the other is called tomorrow. Today is the right day to love, believe, do, and mostly live. I leave you with a general thought. Life is hard, especially today in these difficult times, but really always. So let's do our best to help each other. Thank you for your time and your attention. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Have a good night.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. You know, I have a question for you right off the bat.
Sure.
How was it meeting with Spock? How did that go?
That was one of the most exciting moments of my life. It really was. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that that could happen. But I made a donation to his charity. He made a donation to my charity. And we had a great talk for about an hour. It was wonderful. Really down to earth man. He was so interested in helping and helping society, helping the world. I mean, he really was a very good man, and I'm just so sorry that he didn't take advantage of cryonics, but he was a really wonderful guy.
Yes, there's that thing, cryocrastination, where people
Yes.
a good idea. I'll get to that someday, and someday I'll get to that. It's similar to how people think about their funeral. They don't think about it. They don't address it, and it's so important for people that are in a position where any position that they're in. It's the ultimate life insurance, cryonics, and it's so important for people to jump in there now, to have that life insurance now,
Yes.
and be protected with that. I'm hoping that we'll have many more people joining, and your presentation was wonderful. Thanks for all that you did. There was a question that came up. When did you meet Spock? Would you like to talk about that a bit?
It was about 6 months before he passed away. I believe it was 2015, and it was in New York. There was a theater called the Leonard Nimoy Thalia, and it's part of a larger theater whose name escapes me at the moment, a nonprofit theater. And so that was the charity that I gave a small donation to, and we met and we talked there, and I said to him, "How long have you owned the theater?" And he said, "Oh, I don't own it. They just call me when they need me to write a check." So
yeah, that's the way it is, isn't it? Another question came in with regard to William Shatner. Has anyone approached William Shatner? Do you know any of the other Star Trek stars?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because actually Zach Quinto, who took over as Mr. Spock in the new series, has mentioned that he wants to take over some of Leonard Nimoy's projects. And I have not been able to contact him, to reach him, to talk with him about this. If anybody knows him or knows of a means of contacting him, I would love to have the help in that regard. As far as William Shatner, which was the actual question, as a recovering lawyer, I get to change the question to what I want it to be. So, but as to the actual question that was asked, I don't know about William Shatner. I don't have any means really of approaching him. He is really into horses, though. So if we have any horse people, you might have an in with William Shatner. His big charity, I believe, is a horse-related charity, and he loves riding and things like that. So, but yeah, it would be great to get him involved because he talks a lot. He's got a big mouth, and he's very excited and about pretty much everything. And he would be a tremendous promoter, I think, if we could even just speak with him for a few minutes. So God bless you if you want to do it. Please do. If you have any ideas for me, I'm happy to do it too. But, my free time between 2 and 5 a.m., I try and get a few winks in. So.
Well, thank you for that, Joe. I do hope some of the stars from Star Trek will watch our recording of this event, and perhaps they'll be calling you on the phone in the near future.
I hope so.
Yes, I do too.
Or any of the stars who are watching from your service, from the service at the church, or who are just visitors tonight. You're all stars. Don't hesitate to call.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Joe.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that we had you here this evening to join us on this event. This is our yearly Remembrance of the Resurrectables celebration, and that's coming up soon. And before we get to that, I just want to tell everyone that we will be here again with a special presentation from Perpetual Life on James Bedford Day. That'll be January the 12th, a celebration of cryonic suspension with Ben Best. He'll be giving us a presentation. And I'd like to encourage all of you to keep in touch with me. Send me emails. If you're not on our mail list, get on our email list. It's very important for us to be able to keep in touch with you, to let you know what's going on at the church and what's going on with all of the things that are happening. And I'd like to be sure to get you the information quickly on those very important topics that are coming to us. And so that's, again, our next event, January 12th, a celebration of James Bedford Day. I'd like to take this time to wish everyone a joyful winter solstice, a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah. Luckily, here at Perpetual Life, we get to celebrate all the holidays. We get all the fun. So that's one of the perks of being a member of the Church of Perpetual Life. We have all the holidays, every one of them. And so that's what we love to do, is celebrate life, celebrate all that is good in life. And now what we're going to do is go into that portion of our evening, which has to do with the remembrance of the Resurrectables. this is a tribute to all of the patients currently in suspension. And those that are in suspended animation, we will give a list of these people that are public about the fact that they're in suspension. And we'll give a little biography about some of them, and we update this every year. So I would like you to know that this is going to be in 2 parts on our recording. There will be a separate recording of these of this Remembrance of the Resurrectables, so that you can enjoy that whenever you'd like to, and find some meditation in those moments of those who are in suspension. I'd like to also mention how important it is for us in the future to bring these people out of suspension. They're there waiting to come out, and it's our job and the jobs of those of us to come in the future to bring everyone who goes into suspended animation out, to reanimate everyone who is in suspension, and go all the way back to James Bedford, the first person, the oldest, currently the oldest person in suspension, to bring him out as well. So now I'd like to turn to our AV team to launch the Remembrance of the Resurrectables for 2020. And Joe, I thank you again for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Neil.